I am Kit, and this is me 23 weeks on low-dose testosterone and finasteride. The only noticeable change I've seen this week is my voice. It has dropped down again, which is exciting. I have noticed it sounded pretty deep. Like Thursday, I was talking and I was like, wow, my voice sounds like really gravelly. So I tested it and yeah, it dropped down below what the app says is androgynous zone. I tested it a little later in the day and it popped back up on Friday. I tested it again and it was low. In the middle of the day, it popped back up a little bit. So what I'm seeing in the pictures I'm taking is that my voice is actually a little bit lower in the morning and then wanders up a little after I use it some more. But it's fun to see it drop down again. I recorded myself and was like, hey, do I actually sound like I'm in the male zone? And I'm like, no, I still sound pretty feminine to me. It doesn't even sound androgynous to me. But maybe one of you guys has another opinion because maybe I'm just biased against myself. The other usual change, the acne, has been fairly absent this week, just a couple of dots here and there. Nothing particularly noticeable. My facial shape, I took a picture because I was like, ooh, is it looking different again? And the last one I was comparing it to was only a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know. So I'm thinking maybe once a month at about the middle of the month, I'll start tracking that more often just in photos instead of videos because it's really hard to see it in the video I'm making. But in specifically, or set up specific angle photos, if I get them at about the same way every time, I might be able to see the changes that are happening. My muscle mass, again this week, I was doing a lot of painting and I didn't feel any tiredness. And one of my coworkers was like, yeah, you must really be building some muscle mass doing all that demo a few months ago. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm building muscle mass. I'm doing demo and using jackhammers. I'm not telling my coworkers about my T transition. So I was like, oh yeah, yep, that's absolutely why. Just a lot of heavy work. It felt kind of fun to be hiding something from one of my coworkers who is unsupportive of me and just being like, oh, yep, absolutely. You're right on cue. My finasteride still doing its thing. Facial hair, body hair, balding and bottom growth are still non-existent. My skin hasn't changed. I think your skin's supposed to get thicker, but I haven't particularly noticed any more roughness. My oily skin, hasn't increased, or my hair hasn't gotten more oily. My body scent hasn't changed, but I am particularly getting fond of using the semi-scented masculine deodorant instead of the unscented feminine deodorant that I've always used. I don't like smelling like things, but it makes me feel like, my life's changing when I'm just changing my armpit scent. So that's just a little thing that is happening with me, my mental state that I didn't expect, but it's kind of fun. My body measurements, again, I haven't been measuring regularly. My clothes are still fitting the way they fit when I bought them, so we'll see. I've adjusted my intermittent fasting to increase the calories again when I'm working. I've found the calorie intake and maintenance levels of the weight I'd like to be at. So I'm sticking with that instead of just this flat 1,500 every day. And my theory is that if I keep it that calorie maintenance level, my body will eventually get down to where I want it. But since I'm not in a hurry anymore, I'm letting that process go a little slower. My mood I will get back to my mood. My social dysphoria hasn't been too bad this week. One of my coworkers did use they, them pronouns for me unexpectedly. So, and another one did say they, but I'm not sure if he was referring to, he was talking about me, but I'm not sure if he was referring to just me or me and the other coworker I was working with. He was like, are you done painting the bathroom? And I was like, no, I was about to do the second coat. And he's like, yeah, I was thinking maybe I'd just wait for them to be done before I took the measurements for the countertop. And I was like, did you use them for me or for me and the other coworker? Not sure. I'd like to believe it was for me because, my pin, but we'll see. My body dysphoria hasn't changed at all. I'm still wearing my binder when I go out, but I'm wearing it a little less often when I go out because my clothes fit my body better and they hide my chest when I'm not wearing my binder. So I'm not as conscious of it when I'm wearing some of my new outfits. So my mood has, in my bipolar hasn't been the problem, but something I haven't talked about in any of my videos is I've been in a decently long-term relationship since before I started T. It started about 3 months before I started my transition, and it lasted 8 months. But this week, I had to break it off because I noticed that my feelings for this person had disappeared, just up and vanished over, the course of about 2 weeks. I saw him 2 weeks ago. And then when I saw them again this week, I was like, I feel nothing. And I've been really trying to figure out why. The feelings started changing after I started transitioning. I noticed I started being a little more emotionally distant, or more that my emotional attachment hadn't been growing the way I expected it to. And this leads back to being demisexual and demi-romantic that I mentioned in my intro video, is that I need the emotional connection before I start feeling romantic or sexual towards somebody. And they sort of went on a halt when I started T because all my energy was going towards this transition and getting my head wrapped around the fact that I was just about to start changing my body in drastic ways. And then came the health concerns, and that sapped more of my energy when I had to start managing my eating and my diet and wondering, am I making myself more healthy here? And then that just never particularly came back to the relationship. I really wanted it to work. I really held on to it as long as I could, even despite the fact that I could tell I wasn't developing any further feelings. And I was trying not to, but unsuccessfully starting to beat myself up about it, about not feeling and doing things in the relationship that I should do, what I felt was expected of a relationship at the 6, 7, 8 month mark. And I began wondering, is this because of my transition? Is it because I'm changing the hormonal makeup of my body and it's affecting my attraction? I went on a lot. Tried to talk to a lot of I reached out to a lot of trans groups like, is this common? Is this common? And nobody responded. People were like, well, maybe you're just depressed, or maybe you were just seeking validation and now you don't need it anymore. And I'm like, those aren't really, because I started the relationship before I became uncomfortable with my body. And so it wasn't those. And I didn't know if it's related to my changes. I didn't know if it's related to my dysphoria, that I didn't want to be physically close to somebody anymore. I didn't really want to be touched very much. Like a hug and maybe an arm around the shoulder while we were watching movies or something was like the limit of how much I wanted to be touched. And maybe that physical distance pushed my emotional distance away. Maybe it has to do with just never being the right person to trigger my emotional connection properly. Maybe it has to do with the fact that my bipolar is stable now, and my borderline personality disorder has been that's not an innate disorder, that's a learned behavioral pattern, and I've worked my way through most of those behavioral patterns. So the intensity of feeling I have towards people has drastically altered because the BPD made me build really quick, intense feelings, and the bipolar came with hypersexuality, so I'd get into sexual situations with people really quickly. Even though I didn't feel attraction, I was like really sexually horny all the time, and the person I developed the BPD attachment to was the person my hypersexuality latched onto. And now that those two are gone, I don't know if that, I don't know how that's affecting my attachment style. I know I'm going on about this a lot, but it's really been bothering me for the last few days, and I've really been trying to talk to people about it, and nobody has an answer because they're not me. I really just want the answer to be your hormones are different, so your attraction style is different. But hormones don't generally change attraction. It'll change libido, which, hasn't changed for me. I don't have an answer, and I'm feeling lost in myself. I'm feeling like I don't particularly know who I am and what kind of relationship I can have with somebody. I'm longing for an emotional connection, a romantic attraction. I'm not really caring about the sex, but I want to feel that intense longing for somebody. And I don't know if I'm capable of that when my mental illnesses are stable, when they're not controlling my emotions. And it's just really confusing for me. So I don't know if that's related to my transition at all, but I'm bringing it up because it's a big change for me. It's a big issue I'm dealing with right now. I think that's all I have to say right now. So I appreciate you listening to my rambling about my romantic and sexual identity, and I will see you next week.